So the next question is, when do the gates of paradise open? You know, that's the question. So the first fiqhi question, when are the gates of heaven open? So why am I going over this? Because if you want the upshot of this, I just say go with your community. Okay, simple as. Okay, so we will have people starting the month, maybe this year, 15th of Sha'ban even. There were people doing it on different days, weren't there? The fast of Sha'ban. Some people doing it on Tuesday, fasting it, and other people doing it on Wednesday. So I'm assuming, is that Ramadan, there might be some difference. Some years there are, some years there aren't. So how do we deal with this? I say go with your community. Don't make a ruckus about this. The beginning of Ramadan is actually not an issue whatsoever, because you're just fasting an extra day. If you don't feel in your heart that it really has started, it doesn't really matter if you fast another, and you say, well, the Prophet ﷺ forbade us for fasting 2 days before the month of Ramadan. But that's with the intention that you're being precautious. Okay, you're not doing that here. You're saying it's a valid opinion, that they're fasting this day, and I'm doing it in order to keep unity with my family or my community. It's not an issue, but the reason I'm going to go into a bit of detail about this is just simply to raise awareness, because I think that's the way. There's no short-term solution to this, but there's a long-term solution to it, where more and more of the community become aware of how the months work. I think we end up being able to create unity long-term on this. Creating long-term, short-term unity is not going to happen. That's just a reality. But raising awareness we can do in the short term, in order that we can get unity in the long term. So you'll see the map behind me. Is that clear for everybody? Yep. So you'll see here. So this is obviously on your left-hand side. Yep. Is South America and North America there, isn't it? Okay. And you see that green area there. Yeah. So you can get these on moonsighting.com. Wifaq al-Ulama, they have this. You can get it on many sites. These are charts of predictability. So they predict when the moon can be seen. Remember, we're not interested in when the moon can be born, because we can confidently assert when the new moon is born. That's not an issue. The issue is when the new moon can be sighted. That's what's not possible. Okay, it's going to be a 50-50. There's no way you can predict it. It's a give or take. And so that's what causes the issue. When can that moon be seen? Where can that moon be seen first? It can be seen first. The new moon can be seen first from the east. Am I right? West. Yeah, the West. I'm always never eat shredded wheat. I'm still to these days. I'm having to refer back to that. So the West is where it can be seen first, from the southern hemisphere of the West, most of the time. It's definite that it can be seen from the West first, the new moon, but whether it can be seen at the southern hemisphere or the northern hemisphere depends on the time of year, actually. There are times of the year when the northern hemisphere can actually see a new moon, because remember, we sight for each month, it's recommended. It can be sighted sometimes. We in England can end up seeing the new moon before even South Africa or South America sometimes, because it depends. The moon is an unpredictable thing. But definitely this time of year, South America and areas of North America will see, from the west coast, will see the new moon first, more than likely, okay? And so a country like Saudi Arabia, which is there, if they sight the moon, then there's if they've sighted the moon and no one west of them has sighted it with clarity, with clear skies, and South America, South Africa, it's generally going to have clear skies most of the time, that's an impossibility. Does that make sense? That's scientifically impossible that suddenly the moon appeared in the middle of the map, and no one else saw it before them. It's just not possible. So for Saudi to announce that before, or any country to announce that, we have to verify, we have to use a bit of science, were there any countries west of them that saw it? Does that make sense? And if there's not, and they had clear skies, then we can't validate that. That's like saying, I saw the sunrise and it's 12 o'clock at night. Okay? That's just not possible. Even if people cite it or not, it has no credibility to it whatsoever. And so that's the first issue. So we really have to go with a sighting from the west. So the concept of Saudi going with Saudi really doesn't hold much weight, unless if Saudi spot it and another country west of them has spotted it, fair dues, no problem. That's not an issue whatsoever. We can go with Saudi Arabia. Now, the question is how far west can we go with? And the reality is, I estimated it, say Brazil sighted it, we can really go with a Brazilian sighting, to be honest, for these reasons. One is because they are still in the same day as us. If you do the maths, because they're going to sight the sun going down in South America is going to be around, what, 6 o'clock maybe? 7 o'clock latest. And then we are going into, so 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, okay? We're still in the same day, really. So we can still make our intentions for, and that depends on when Fajr comes in, obviously, which we're going to look at that issue. But at 12 o'clock, we can assume that we are still in. And so we can go with South America, because now we've got the technology in order for them to relate to us that they have seen it. Obviously, some people like to be cautious and they like to say, you know, are there bodies of Muslims there who are doing these sightings? And that always gives us a piece of peace of mind. But we can go with them, really, to be honest. And so if South America have a valid sighting, we could, and this is all theoretical, because I said the practicalities is we go with our communities regardless. I'm just raising awareness, is that we could go, and we have got Muslim communities there. What most of the Muslim community decide to do here in England, though, is that they go with which country? Right, go on. Morocco. Well, that's a traditional one. What did you say? Morocco. Anyone else? South Africa, yeah. Morocco used to be, way back, that was decades ago, they used to go with Morocco. Morocco's got some of the most stringent methodologies of sighting moon. I've lived there, and one of my teachers, Sheikh Abdul Hayy Amrawi, Allah give him a long life, he's quite old now. We used to stand up in the minaret of Andalus minaret in Fez, and we used to spot it every month with him. And so they're very rigid, and so that's why the community felt safer. But to be honest, it makes more sense to go with South Africa, because the predominant position within the Hanafi school is that you can go with global sightings. So as long as one country or one area spots it, we can go with them. Now, you may ask, well, in traditional times, that people's definition of a global sighting was very different to what we perceive to be a global sighting. In the traditional Maliki books, they spoke about the distance you could go with was a difference between Spain and Khorasan. And Khorasan is like modern day Iran, Uzbekistan, that area. So so we're talking Spain to around this area, okay? And I think the reason they said that was because of the time staying within the time difference of the day, staying within the same day. Does that make sense? So, personally, I don't have an issue if we would go to a sighting. Like California would be a bit of a stretch, because I think you'd have to do the maths, the time difference. Are you in the same day or not? Okay? But if it's 5 hours or something, I think between 6 and 7 you're pushing it to be in the day, to be honest. But if it's 5, I think it's not a problem. But today, most of the bodies, they go with South Africa, okay? Because it's dead straight down from the southern hemisphere and we've got Muslim communities there who are very active, and we can get communication, and the time difference isn't major either. I think it's about 3 hours, is it? South Africa, I'm not too sure. Anyone know? Huh? 2, is it? Yeah, and generally they see the sun goes down earlier as well, so we've got plenty of time to hear whether the month's come in or gone out before even we're breaking our fast. So, for practically at the moment, people are generally going to South Africa. The issue I have with some of the bodies of the community, and most do this, I've spoken to in Bradford, is they might not tell you this, but they already decide when they're going to start Ramadan, regardless, both camps. The ones that go with Saudi and the ones that don't go with Saudi, okay? It's more of an issue of, we're not going with Saudi. It's not about being right, it's about we define our identity by not being them, which is wrong as well. And so both those methods are wrong. However, that method of, like, if you basically got the moon sighting maps out and you made an estimation, so this isn't a current one, this is an old map, and you saw where it was green, so basically the day generally you'll see it's not possible at all the next day, apart from a few islands of the Peloponnesian Islands or something like that, and you think, no way is Ramadan come in. Well, that's the day with Saudi go a lot of the time, okay, because they're going with births, not sightings. So you say, well, that's not really possible. The next day, generally, after that, you can see it. So the reality is you can make predictions with the coming of Ramadan, and you'll be 99% of the time on the ball, and you'll be accurate. So what they're doing works, but theoretically it's wrong. Do you understand my point? Is that theoretically you're not supposed to announce and make a decision until you've got a sighting. And that really, a few years back, it hit them bad, because in South Africa they spotted it when they thought they weren't going to spot it. And that's why in Bradford, if anyone remembers way back a few years ago, there was some proper kickoffs, because the ones who have made the prediction, like I think it was the Birmingham organisations through Pir Siddiqui Sahib, Allah have mercy on his soul, they made an announcement within the Brailevi community, and they went against what the other Brailevi community were making a stance. They were basically been holding to that stance, and it cost, like, they were having meetings that night, and it was all over. There was like fights in the mosque and all sorts of things. And my take, what I discovered, maybe you don't have these shenanigans down in Nottingham and other places. It all happens in Yorkshire, okay? We get everything. So what I discovered from that incident was I realised who decides when Eid is. It's the women cooking in the kitchen, because they basically hadn't prepared for that day for Eid. So when their husbands came back, or they said, Eid is tomorrow. And they said, on my dead body, is it? They said, I ain't prepared for it. And so they said, you go and tell that imam that basically Eid's the next day, or you're not getting any roti and samosas. So they went down the mosque very angry, and the imam got it stinking, and he was standing up against the women of the community, and he didn't stand a chance. And so that's what I realised, okay? That decisions are made really by our women, okay? Not by the men, because it's all about when you're going to be eating your Eid for food. And so that's why I say we've got to be practical about it. That's the theory. Does that make sense? And so that's what I mean, raise awareness about it and spread this sort of information so people are not, it's important that people don't go in confused. But the reality is, just go with your community, and the beginning of the month's not an issue. The end of the month is a little bit more controversial, because you may be breaking your fast. If you're convinced by something, you're breaking your fast when the month still is in. Now, what I say with this, if your family are doing Eid that day, just do Eid that day, break it with them, make it up. There's no kafara, there's no atonement for that, and we're going to go into that, because the atonement has to be you're breaking the sacred nature of the month nonchalantly. Like, I don't give a monkeys, I'm going to basically do something. That's what necessitates a kafara. And so if your family are doing it a day before when you don't feel comfortable, don't cause issues. That's the worst time. If your family are understanding and they say, no problem, we have two, like my next door neighbours, they've got like, I'm using these terms loosely, Salafi community and Sunni community, they basically just have 2 days of Eid. So they're all like amicable and they visit one another regardless. If you can do it like that, that's great. If it's causing a lot of stress on the family and people bickering, then just don't, it's not worth it. Okay? Has anyone got any questions about that? No? Is that clear for everybody?
But if you do break your fast,
yes.
you do Eid that day.
Yes.
Technically, I mean, if you
Yeah.
So you shouldn't really be eating, right?
Well, you shouldn't, but the point is, so Saad says, but there's a sacredness to the month, and this is a key principle in Ramadan, is that, like we talk about, even when people aren't fasting, they should still have a veneration for the month by not eating publicly, and if, like, for example, women, for example, come off their menses in the middle of the day, it's in the Hanafi school, it's quite strict. They say it's makruh tahriman for you to eat once you've come into a state where you can eat. But the opposite is, if you come on your menses, you eat, okay, because you're excused completely. But if you come off your menses in the middle of the day, the fast isn't valid, you're not fasting, but out of veneration, respect for the day, you shouldn't eat. So we have this principle, yeah. But this is an issue of social harmony, which has a principle, there's a principle as well. We don't want sedition in the community. It's just not worth it, and that we have to respect that. And so, the most important thing is, yes, make the day up, but there's no kafara for that. That's the concern people have, is that if I break it now, there should be a kafara, really. No, because you're doing it against you don't really want to do it, but you're doing it out of compulsion for the sake of the unity of the community.
You know, the kafara, then is that the Ayyam al-Ukhar, another day, or is it the other time where you'll have to fast like 2 consecutive months?
No, that's what I'm saying. So when I say kafara, I mean 2 consecutive months of fasting. You don't have to do that. You just have to make the day up if you don't feel you don't feel comfortable in your heart that the month has really ended.
It's a bit like a qada.
Yeah, it's just a qada. Yeah, kafara is the actual 60 days or 2 months. Whilst when I say qada, it's just a 1 day. Yeah, they're making up 1 day. Yeah. So, oh yeah, good scenario here. So, what I'm saying, basically, you feel that Ramadan's ended, and your family are saying, no, it's not ended. That's not complicated at all, that. Because you can have a little nibble on the side, and they're not going to know. You know, what's to say you're fasting and not fasting? So that's simple. The more complicated issue is when you can convince it's Ramadan still, and they're breaking it. That's more there's more ramifications to that, and people are less hesitant to do that. Does that answer your question?
Say you did fast, but then afterwards it came to light and the information you did. Thereafter, you fast.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got some conviction that it's not Ramadan, then you can break it. That's not a problem.
So they say that happened afterwards, people convince you afterwards that you fasted like you can't eat. So what's the issue? What's the penalty?
Yeah, so you realize. So Khodam's question is, you decided not to fast that day, and it was Eid. It came to light to you that it was Eid that day. Okay, it's haram to fast Eid. Okay, but if you, as I said, you assumed it wasn't, and then you found out later, there's no penalty on that. Because that happened to people in communities. People would be fasting the day, and then someone would come from another community and say, in the middle of the day, and say, do you realise it's Eid? And they will go with that sighting then, and that's why it's permissible to pray the Eid prayer later on, like up until Dhuhr comes. Yep.